Hi everyone, I'm your host Matt Salem, and you've tuned in to another episode of Our Best Behavior, brought to you by Behaviorally. We are the global digital-first leader in defining and diagnosing human behavior to help you achieve the most valuable moment in marketing, when a purchase transaction occurs. We are Behaviorally, the transaction experts. Each episode, we share insights on trending topics within our industry and of interest to our customers. Today, I'm fortunate to be joined by Sheryl Brie, Vice President and Head of Behavioral Qualitative here at Behaviorally, to discuss the chapter, How Does It Make Me Feel?, in our complimentary ebook. Our book, The Power of Packaging to Drive Shopper Growth, compiles over 50 years of best practice learning into an inspirational and practical guide to help create effective pack design. This year, we even launched a revised edition with a bonus chapter around packaging for e-commerce. Sheryl, great to have you with me today.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
So we're going to talk a bit about a chapter in this book that I know is near and dear to you called How Does It Make Me Feel? And I know you've read through the whole book. I know, frankly, before reading the book, you probably knew what the book was about because you've been here just as long as many of us. And I will just say that's many years, right? We won't put a number on it.
You know what? I almost lost count at this point because when we go back and we look at it, I looked at my LinkedIn and I think it's 15 years.
Woof.
Where did the time go?
Woof. Things have changed, right? Things change over 15 years. But in many ways, and I think that's the irony of the book, there's fundamental truths that remain 15 years later that were here before we even came on board, right?
Absolutely.
Prior to that.
Absolutely.
So, one of these chapters, How Does It Make Me Feel, covers some of that mindset, I would say. And, I'm wondering, why is that a chapter that's near and dear to you?
Well, it's where qual lives. Qualitative research is not about the numbers. It's not about coming up with a validation. It's about understanding where the strategy is effective, if you've actually seen the strategy come out in the package designs, and understanding how that resonates. Like, first off, does your strategy work, or was it the tactics that you used to execute that strategy? So understanding that emotional connection is what every brand is out there doing, and packaging is one of those vehicles.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, so looking at imagery and that connection, like it when you go into a store and you're looking for a product, when you finally see something or what ends up in your cart, it feels like you. Like this product is mostly me. And that's why it comes off the cart. If you even, as you're walking around a supermarket, it's fun for me to watch. I mean, I'm a geek when it comes to that. I know you are too, so I'm among friends here. But you can look at somebody's cart and then look at how they're dressed. And it almost looks the same. Like people who are very, sophisticated and beige pick out sophisticated and beige products versus other ways to look at it. Even when I was working in the feminine care, sorry to bring up feminine care.
But I've worked on a lot of fem care and Inco studies across my life here, so no problems bringing it up with me.
So I remember FemCare where they came out with this design, and the design really spoke to some of the women who were older, on the older end of the spectrum, because it was very loud and 80s-like and really spoke to nostalgia almost. I know it's FemCare, but still, it's design. And then there was some others that feel more sophisticated or simplified, and those spoke to a different set or generation or specific target market. So it's really interesting to understand that, people come with their own perceptions, their own beliefs that have created this mental model in their mind about how things look and what is attractive to them and what also is satisfying the needs of that category. So imagery, it might look fun and, I'm obviously pink and purple with everything, as are you. But when we think about these different imagery and what we want to project in a category, we want to speak to that person. And then we also want to speak to those person's emotional drivers and those needs. So, I might not want the prettiest out there type of packaging when I'm going to a shelf for, let's say, wound care. I'm looking for something that's going to be very practical or thick or whatever, absorbent, whatever it might be, those functional needs. So you have to not just understand the person, but the strategy and how to talk to that person and their emotional drivers and what they're trying to achieve. So that's a long-winded. Did I answer your question?
That's why it's near and dear to you. I mean, this is why, because
dear.
it just comes out with ease. And a couple takes from me there. I mean, I guess first for those listening and not watching, because you can watch. This is what Cheryl's referring to with pink and purple for me. She's always envious of my water bottle.
This is mine.
She always mentions to me how she loves my water bottle, and I thank her for that every single time. I'm also going to be mindful of what's in my cart and what I'm wearing at the supermarket, apparently, because there's judgment going on. And I know sometimes when I take the kids, they're in their PJs, and maybe I shouldn't be doing that.
You should totally be doing that. Like, even think we use a projective technique in Qual about the kind of car. What kind of car do you think this package design would drive?
Sure.
And it really comes up. That's a projective exercise that we use from time to time, along with the other tools in our toolbox to understand the imagery behind packaging. But even the car you drive kind of says something about what your values are, what your beliefs are, and what, if you're like me and just got rid of a car seat and whatever, when I first got my Bug, I was really happy not to have a back seat that would accommodate a diaper bag and a car seat. So, it really said something about me to go out and get a convertible Bug because, hey, it was like freedom from those kind of obligations.
Yeah, I wait for that day when those car seats come out the back, but I digress. So some interesting points that you made there that I want to piggyback off of, because you started going down kind of what about packaging can start to evoke persona perhaps, or, imagery in a shopper's mind tied to whether it be the brand or the product. I was thinking a bit about color in categories and how color, and I've talked about this on other podcasts even recently, can have different meanings, right? So you think about red and white, for example, right? Red and white in the carbonated beverage is going to tell you Coca-Cola, right? Red and white in canned soup is going to tell you Campbell's, right? So same colors, different thought comes to mind, right? But then there's this kind of reverse aspect of when you're in the aisle and perhaps in exploration mode, how colors can talk to you, how imagery can talk to you. So it may not be an association that's kind of baked into your mind, but a way that the packs talk to you. And I don't know if there's any particular common threads that you see over the years when it comes to tactics that are used that work to evoke feeling for shoppers, whether it's color or graphics or structure.
It's all of that.
It's
never one element. First off, color, shape, size, all of that is important to visibility. Our mantra is you've got to be seen before you can be heard. So that's always important. And thinking about color at the first blush of a category. Can I find my product? And what's interesting when we think about can I find mine, I want to go to the familiar. I want to default to that. I want to find that. And even in promiscuous categories where there's scent or flavor variety, they always start there and then they look for something new. So it's the something old and the something new conundrum there, where I have my safe bet, and then maybe if it's a category that you get more than one at, they pick up something else and they're looking for that variation and what's the newest thing on the shelf. And that can be conveyed through color, imagery, whatever it might be, the tactics that are used in design to feel like something new. Even just the word new on a package can do that. But imagery is very important. It includes the visual image, obviously, but also font styles and the brand itself, and how that looks, and the shape of the package. When we think about package design, when you think of a certain shape, you mentioned Coke, it's got that certain shape, that noticeable shape. Even when we think about bigger other brands like Dove, for example, and their body wash and their changes over time to that container that it comes in, very memorable. And that's imagery is about a combination of things. It's about striking that memory of what it's been in the past. It's about understanding what emotion came with that memory and those associations. So we talk a lot about impression. What impression are you getting from this package? And that impression is that person's perceptual filter of what they're seeing. So it's not just what was painted on or pictured or executed on the package. It's what they also bring to the picture and what the designers try to evoke. And how do you even know where to start? As a designer, there's a lot of opportunity to see where the category is and what those cues are in the category first before you even get started on the journey. And then also what's out there in the universe, in this person's environment that you're trying to target, that will cue that imagery that you want to evoke through your strategy. So it's convoluted, but it's really artful when I see designs come in and really strike the chord. And working with a client from the very beginning, understanding what the parameters are of the landscape of the category through their test and learn parts of the process where they're putting out ideas, and we're trying to really strike that chord with the consumer, and then seeing it happen in the actual purchase process and watching how people shop and having that come to life where, oh, this resonates with me. This speaks to my current needs in the category, or if I'm buying for somebody else, it really looks like something that I can buy. We were working on a food category just recently. And, it's really amazing that food visuals should look beautiful, right? They should have all the garnishments and all this great stuff. But, when parent comes in and they're shopping for their child, gosh, if you put something sprinkly green on it, they're never going to eat it, right? So learning about that imagery and where those parameters are very helpful in the research process. So when you finally get to a validation point outside of qual, your imagery is right, you're striking the right chord, you're creating the right balance, and of course you're seen and heard at the same time.
Yeah, sure. And I mean, the last few points that you made about the research process is a great segue to where I was going next in my mind, because I started thinking about, okay, well, obviously, I mean, first and foremost, you worked very hard to revamp and reintroduce, I would say, our kind of research techniques for qualitative, right? And thinking about that pack path, right? The path to get folks to validation, our clients being the folks, right? And there's a process there that was put in place that we feel is very sound and very fundamental to ensuring that great packaging design is going on shelf. What I wanted to start to ask you about a bit more are some of the techniques that are used, because if you think about how does it make me feel, there's often this disconnect or juxtaposition perhaps in people's minds when you think about research and asking questions versus getting those true feelings out of people, right? Because I can say one thing and do another, and we've seen that time and again over the years. So what are some of those techniques that you're using? Because certainly there needs to be rational questions, right? But I think we've learned more and more over time that we have to look at them through a certain lens, and that there's a lot more value in some of the observation that we can do. So what are you doing in regards to observation versus kind of rationalizing with shoppers?
Well, I think it starts with our clients coming in with a question on, they've decided on a strategy. And the first question I have to, as a researcher, answer is, has this communicated the strategy? Before I talk about, is the strategy working or not? We do projective exercises. I mentioned the car before. We do a planet. If you, ended up visiting this planet and it looks something like this, what are the people like? And it sounds touchy-feely. We go in depth. If this person were going to pick you up for a day and you're going to spend the day with them, what kind of car do they drive? What is playing over the speakers in their car, that kind of stuff. So, and you'll notice that when I do those questions, I ask all the things that get to all the senses, which is, how do you feel? What does this person look like? What type of personality does it project? Also, what does it sound like? What does it taste like? What does it feel like? So at the end of the day, we want to know, how does it make you feel? And where are those connections and associations? And yes, it's it's the imagery that we're trying to get to understand, that perceptual filter that your consumer, your shopper has come to the shelf with, and how they're perceiving your product and the design and how it looks. So having their filter there, them in the conversation while they're looking at it and doing those projective techniques, they may not know why they chose it's a Honda Accord and they're listening to Top 40. It might feel something that's very commercial or very popular, which may not speak to them. There's a difference of what it projects for. Then we've got to understand, well, does it speak to you? At the end of the day, how does it make you feel? Does it make you feel included? Do you want to hang out with this person? And if not, oh, no, this person is too sophisticated. It's the Mercedes-Benz and I drive the Honda Accord. You know, like it might be aspirational, but not attainable. Sure. So that's also what we're judging in qual. Just so by the time you get to quant, you have that magic that happens with design when it happens, that you're driving more purchases, you're feeling that connection very quickly. They may not say, oh, I love this container because it makes me feel like I'm a child from, on the boardwalk on my sunny days in New Jersey. That's not what it's about. It might actually be the reason, but we're looking for the imagery that creates that quick connection that gets us to the behavior. Yeah. So I don't know if I answered your question.
You've been answering my questions very well. I'm really enjoying the conversation. I guess where I want to go now, and perhaps as we start to close out, is when you're conducting your research. We started in this game at a time where online really wasn't proliferated, right? Everything was happening in person. There was very limited online research, and the game's been completely flipped on its end. And I think, I can speak for myself, and I think I could speak for you in that we've seen quite a number of advantages from digital approaches, right? In terms of, the obvious stuff like reach and speaking to people from different geographies at the same time, things of that nature. But also just being able to look at how people feel in different ways, right? And I'm curious, when you talk about some of the projective techniques, that feels a bit more conversational in nature, but do you have an example of a tool that you're using that the digital realm enables you to use that you weren't able to use in person? I mean, for me, and maybe this is the example you would throw out there, but I think about the impact of personal journeys on research. And personal journeys always existed, but it was more about accompanying people and trying to be in their space. And I feel like there's a difference if these are digital and they're kind of doing it on their own, and then there's a way to talk about it afterwards. It feels like it's almost a more natural experience.
There's pluses and minuses to both. And the great benefit, like you mentioned, is reach, is where I can talk to somebody in New Jersey, I can talk to somebody in the Midwest, I can talk to somebody West Coast all at the same time and looking at the same things and looking at the same stimuli. So that's helpful because there are differences, and we've got to make sure we understand those geographical differences, especially in products that have that impact, like sunscreen, for example. Sure. So it's important to speak to a nice representative samples across geographies. So that's important, and a huge advantage for digital. The other thing is people's comfort level, and talking about something. I feel far more comfortable if I'm petting my cat off camera than if I was in a focus group room. So imagine,
don't lie, your pet makes it on camera sometimes. Let's be honest, okay? All of your pets.
All of them. So making sure, feeling comfortable and talking your truth, speaking your truth is important to qual. We need to make sure that we're getting honest, comfortable, and authentic answers, because that's where we get to empathy and understanding where people are coming from and those impressions, how we can make impressions with design. So that's also important. I would love to go back into homes. It's been a while, with COVID and everything, that we haven't done that type of work. There's a lot to be learned in doing that as well. So even though I know we're digital first company, there's always an opportunity to be empathetic. And empathy is driven by really knowing somebody. So there are opportunities. We can get into people's spaces very quickly with digital and have them document and give us back the information they want us to see, but also going to their places.
Right. There's an opportunity for hybrid approaches, and I think that's what we've learned, right? And you can get the reach and the bigger numbers, if you will, even in a qualitative perspective with digital, but
it's fast.
There could still be value to going to 3 to 5 homes, right? And getting that in-person piece to complement it. So
when you think about it, how long does it take to get 3 interviews done digitally?
Right.
Versus doing it at home.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Take a day to do 3.
Right. Well, I guess in closing for me, I always like to just kind of ask my guests something tied to the topic, perhaps not. I'll keep it tied to the topic here. But for you personally, Sheryl, what category drives making you feel the most? What category do you love shopping from, or do you feel you get the most emotional impact from in store? It doesn't have to be a supermarket. It could be, shopping for clothing. It could be whatever you would choose. I'm curious.
Well, if people think, when I tell them outside of our industry, it's hard to explain what we really do. And people think like, oh, you learn how people shop. Oh, that's so nice. You like shopping. No, there's a lot of behavioral economics behind. There's a science behind why, things just jump into your cart as you're moving through a Target. There's a lot of research that went into that effect that you might not even know is happening. Yeah. So I had the pleasure to work on a recent project, which, if you're going to ask me personally, what I like to shop for and it's office supplies, which I know is geeky, but I still use pen and paper. I have my nostalgic pen here from the 80s. And so I do love office supplies. I do have a penchant for them. And so that's what I enjoy shopping for. If I ever need retail therapy, sometimes you'll find me in an Ulta, but I'm more in a Staples or an Office Depot.
I love that. I would have had no idea. That is great intel right there on you, Sheryl.
But every category that we approach, there's always something to learn about a person. Like, I know that we talk about packaging, but what's fantastic about the opportunity I have as a researcher is, yes, I might be talking about a pen or I might be talking about femcare. I get to learn about people and what drives them emotionally. Even the candy categories that we've worked on the past year, there's a lot of emotion that comes to every purchase, especially if you're thinking about a purchase for not just you, but your family. Yeah. And that opportunity to sit in somebody's head and try and really gauge what drives them and what motivates them. And of course, how we can use design to better impact that purchase decision it's just learning for me about human behavior in general. So it's just a vehicle to get me to human behavior and understand how people work.
Love it. Love it. Well, Sheryl, thank you very much for joining me today. You've been an amazing guest. I really enjoyed the conversation. I want to thank our audience for tuning into Our Best Behavior, brought to you by Behaviorally. Sheryl, thank you again so much, and we'll catch you next time.